Okay, so this is video part 1 of Elsa's diary. I'm going to read the first half of the story with you. I'm on page 143, where it's the cover page, and it says Elsa's diary. So the essential question that we're going to be thinking about while we're reading this story is, how can overcoming a challenge change somebody's life? Okay, so I want you to keep that in your mind as we read this story. How can overcoming a challenge change somebody's life? Okay. Now I'm on page 144, and we're going to get started, so follow along. Today is the saddest day of my life, Elsa wrote in her diary on March 25th. She was going to continue, but her father knocked on the door and said, "It's 9 o'clock, dear. Turn off the lights and go to sleep." Elsa put her pen and notebook away in her backpack and promptly obeyed. In the semi-darkness, she could just make out the objects in her room. She had been here before, but it seemed as though it were the first time. The bright, vivid colors of her bedspread, which she liked so much, now seems cold and muted. Elsa looked at the little porcelain squirrel and remembered the day it was given to her. It was the first time she visited this country. She had come to spend some time with her grandmother. One night, she heard a sound like something scratching under the eave of the house. She became frightened, thinking that it might be mice, and she ran to ask her grandmother. Grandma took her to the patio and motioned her to be very quiet. When they reached the back, she saw 2 squirrels playing on the roof right above her room. They were sliding down a branch and leaping onto the roof tiles to gather acorns. Then they would scurry back to the branch and do it all over again. Since there were no squirrels in her country, this was a new experience. She enjoyed watching the squirrels so much that when her vacation was over, Grandma brought her a squirrel figurine and put it on her night table. "It will be here waiting for you when you get back. I'll be back soon, Grandma. I love this place. Maybe someday I'll come back and live with you." Who needs squirrels, she asked herself. She closed her eyes and breathed deeply. She was exhausted. It had been a long day that for some reason had gone slowly. That morning, she had been in Puerto Rico, and now she was in the United States. Except this time, supposedly, it was forever. A tear rolled down her cheek and landed on the pillow. Elsa was 10 years old, and her brother Francisco was 12. At least if they were going to the same school, she would have felt protected, but they weren't. And of course, boys at that age typically don't want anything to do with their little sisters anyway. "He's unbearable," she thought out loud. Just then, her brother came in. "Who's unbearable?" asked Francisco. "You," answered Elsa, holding nothing back. "Oh, why is that?" asked her brother, surprised. "Because you leave me alone all day when you're out running around." "It's obvious that you're afraid to go out," answered her brother. "Look, I've met some neighbors, and they're nice." "And in what languages do you speak to them, huh?" "Well, in English." "I can imagine the crazy things you come up with. But at least I try," retorted her brother. "What you have to do is make an effort. If they don't understand me, I talk with my hands until something happens. I write well in English, and when I read, I understand a lot. But now, when they speak to me, I don't understand a word." "Listen, the woman who lives in the house around the corner." "Which one?" interrupted Elsa. "The one who gave me the $2 to take care of her cat. What about her?" "She told me that she used to listen to the news on the radio and got used to learning English that way. Then, little by little, she understood English better and better." "I don't like the radio," declared Elsa. "Turn on the TV then. But not to those lovey-dovey soaps in Spanish and all that silly stuff you like." "What do you want me to watch then?" "Things from here, like basketball, football." "Football is brutal. I despise sports." "Oh, well, if you'd rather be ignorant, okay, forget it." Elsa regretted ever having to want to be in the same school as her know-it-all brother. She'd have to solve her problem on her own, but how? The summer came to an end and the school year commenced. That's when she met Jose. That day she wrote in her diary, I met a student from Guatemala. He's very quiet and he spends all his time with his head down, drawing in a notebook. He has sad, dark eyes. I thought he was going to talk to me once, but he didn't. He just smiled and kept on drawing. She read what she had written and added, I think I'm going to like this school after all. The fact is, she didn't like the school one bit. The second day of classes, the English teacher called her name, which sounded more like Elisa than Elsa. She got up from her desk expecting a disaster, and that's exactly what happened. She was asked a question that she didn't understand. When it was repeated, she understood even less. She was so nervous that she could only stammer a few syllables. She couldn't continue, and she collapsed in her seat in front of those 40 faces, her opponents. Some disbelieving, some mocking. How embarrassing. Around noon, Jose's turn came. He got up and spoke shyly of the customs and traditions of his country. He mentioned the quetzal, a bird with soft feathers, a green crest, and a red chest. He told how gorgeous this bird was, the symbol of power for Maya, and that today it is officially the national bird of Guatemala. Finally, he showed them a color drawing and told them proudly that the quetzal of the Guatemalan flag was an emblem of national liberty. Everyone clapped. He sat down, and as always, he put his head down and went back to drawing. Okay, I'm gonna end it there for today, and then the second half of the story we're gonna read tomorrow. Okay, just a recap. Elsa immigrated to the United States. She doesn't know a lot of English, and she doesn't have any friends. She had an embarrassing moment in class, and another immigrant from Guatemala was able to stand up and present himself well. So that must have made her feel probably worse, if I had to guess. So that's where we are right now. We're gonna have to see, how Elsa's experience goes. Hopefully, she gets has some better days. So we're gonna stop here today, and then tomorrow I'll read the second half of the story with you and go over your comprehension page. And thanks for watching.